Welcome to Minority Trip Report. MTR is a podcast spotlighting stories of personal transformation and underrepresented leaders in mental health, psychedelics, and consciousness. I'm your host, Raj Siraj. If you're learning from or enjoying Minority Trip Report, please subscribe to MTR on YouTube at Minority Trip Report and follow us on Instagram at Minority Trip. Thank you and enjoy the episode. Today, my guest is Cesar Marin, who is a dynamic entrepreneur and esteemed former CNN producer, as well as the current owner and founder of Cultivating Wisdom. Cultivating Wisdom is a platform that promotes personal growth and enlightenment through the practice of microdosing. Cesar's commitment to wisdom cultivation has made him a respected figure in the psychedelic industry, and his visionary leadership continues to inspire and transform lives. Cesar, thanks for joining us.
Brad, thank you so much for having me. It's really, truly an honor and a pleasure to be here with you. I'm sure we've had conversations. You were one of these first persons when I got into the psychedelic space that I was mesmerized at what you were doing and just how you were leading forward, and the fact that you were a different face, that you somehow had something that I had was really important. So just being here with you is, like I said, humbling and an honor.
I really appreciate that, my friend. It's a pleasure to have you, and I'm very grateful for those kind comments. I want to start, and one of the reasons I wanted to talk to you, and I was very excited to have this conversation, because MTR, we try to spotlight underrepresented perspectives and lived experiences, and the one you have is rare in the sense that you came to psychedelics, not that it's a bad thing, later on in your life,
Correct.
right? And you
Correct.
have this sort of a multi-generational perspective on the responsible use of psychedelics in different
Yes.
ways, and that is something I'm passionate about, because it's for everybody. It's not just
Yeah.
for young people flying around. It's not like what I like about this conversation is that it really opens the conversation to how these medicines can be infused in our day-to-day lives.
Definitely.
It's not for particular moments. Of course, it's for moments of transformation, but also
Yeah.
your everyday. What does it mean? So I want to start there first, and I want give us a sense of what does it mean to transform in your 50s, right? You made a comment that living is wealth, and I really love that idea.
Yeah.
I love that thought. So let's
Mm.
dig into that a little bit. Tell me why transform in your 50s, and what does that even mean?
The reason why it happened to me, and it was a bit forced, and sometimes that happens. Sometimes the universe does this. But I realized I was living this life at 50 where you go through the motions. You're conforming where you are and with your job, and you sense that 10 more years and hopefully I'll be able to retire. Maybe I'll win the lottery from here to then. And you just live in this circle of just mundaneness, and you miss out on things that are going on around you. And like you said, it wasn't psychedelics came really late to me in my life. I was 54 when I had my first psychedelic experience. And it opened me up to this sense of you can reinvent yourself at any age. You really you have to believe in yourself. You have to have faith in yourself. You have to realize what story are you telling yourself. And that's what helps you to reinvent yourself. And there's a potential reinventing ourselves at any age, especially nowadays, especially with the times that we live in now, with the fact with mass communications, with the ability to get our message out, whatever our message is, and touch different people, to be able to reinvent yourself when you've already thought. A lot of people think, oh, 50, it's almost over. You know what? No, life's just beginning. Like my life, like Brad, I'm 56, and every single day is the best day of my life. Every single day I get to reinvent myself. Every single day I get to do something new. Every single day I get to look like there's a miracle around every corner. So it's just that sense of that 50, really at any age, we have to start living. We have to reinvent ourselves to people who are awake and aware of what's going on and what we're doing and how we touch people and how our interactions can change somebody's life in a second. And this whole newfoundness of myself, there's something I love. There's an exercise I love to do, which is I go into the supermarket once or twice a week in the morning and just say hi, good morning to everybody. Not a bit for myself, but a bit also what you don't know whose life you're going to make different. Someone had a bad day, whatever, and just by telling them have a good morning, have a good day, it could change somebody's perspective on life. So it's the idea, Rad, that really you can reinvent yourself at any age. I did it. I was able to do it, and I was able to do it through a hard turn in my life. Like you said, I worked at CNN, and I worked at CNN for 25 years, which meant I was at the job for most of my, if not more of half of my adult life. That's where I was. That identified me, and it was taken away from me. It was not taken away. It was because I did something wrong or because it was a layoff. It was a business. It's just the way it happens. It's just the way we live in. And I could have sat there literally in that sea of depression. Oh, if I would have done this, if I would have done that, maybe if I would have taken that promotion to the other producer, did he get fired? Did he not get fired? Or some storm of anxiety. what's going to
Mm.
happen? What's going to happen next? But it was, no, I was able to wake the reality of right now and realize that I can reinvent myself every day. Every day is a new opportunity to be a new, better me.
You, I think, indicated, and we'll talk about the transformational moment and what the impetus was for that. But you indicated that you had lived till the age of 54, like glazing over stuff. And I think a lot of us can resonate with that in whatever age, because adult life, we tend to be boxed into things and then
Yep.
we get glued to things, glued to material things, and so on. What do you think? What do you attribute to that glazing over? What do you think? What happened to you that you lived like almost like reflexively, like you're programmed?
There was a couple things. There was a couple of things. One, and I think it's something that we all have in common, all the ones that have not been awakened yet, and it's conformity. You
Mm.
conform. This is what it is. It's not. I can't. You tell yourself this story that this is fine. This is okay. I'm fine. I'll retire and whatever. And for me, it was a real life of. And don't get me wrong. I have a wonderful life. I have 3 amazing children. I had a great job at CNN. It wasn't like I was like in a coal mine or anything, but you get conformity kicks in. And at the time, I also had, I'm not going to call it the affliction, but I did have an anchor, which was a dependency to cannabis. And
Mhm.
cannabis in particular is like many other plant medicines, when used without intentions, can lead you down wrong ways, like any medicine without intention, right? And that's the world I lived in a bit, right? I got up, got high, went to work, got high. I was escaping. I was escaping my reality, my doldrum life. You know what I mean? Because I didn't have a Ferrari, because I didn't have a $2 million house, because I didn't have a 50-inch TV, because whatever we were programmed, that was what's important. That's the conformist life that I lived in continuously, right? Even though I had great things around me, I have my health, which is the most important thing. I have my family, right? Great partner. But it was just, there was no alive. There was no sense of
Mm.
every day is the best day of my life. That did not exist. That part
Mm.
did not exist in my life before my, what I call my awakening. It wasn't until then that I got a sense of, wait a minute, hold on a second. I got to take advantage of everything that's around me, whether it's the smells, whether it's the trees, whether it's the air, whether it's my feet on the ground, whatever it is. I have to live this moment right here because it's the only one that exists. And before I wasn't doing it. Before I was living in the past. Oh, you know what? Yeah, times were better. Or in the future. Oh no, whatever. We're gonna do this and we'll do. No, it was that moment of living in the present moment
Mm.
continuously, and it's hard. Of course, it's hard because we have future plans. You know what I mean? We're working on this, we're working on that, because you're learning from the lessons from the. Hey, you know what? I did this wrong. Maybe I'll do this. But it's that sense that sometimes we get on these hamster wheels of the past, and we relive these stories again. If I would have done this, and if I would have done that, if I would have turned a left turn instead of a right turn down there, I wouldn't have crashed. You know what I mean? If my mom would have been a man, she would have been my dad. Our situation. So it's one of those. But to answer your question, the difference between then and now is that I really get a sense that every day is the best day of my life.
How did your children experience you before and after? So I think a lot of, I can imagine my dad's 74, and sometimes I think like, when did he even turn 50? And holy shit, he's 74 now.
Mm.
It's wild, right?
Yeah, in a second, jump on
But there's
that.
also this thing about my dad is, I love him to death, but he also annoys me. So I'm
Yeah,
wondering,
of
like,
course.
how did your kids experience you before your, let's say, before you had your moment of transformation?
That's a great question. That's a really good question. I'm trying to reflect because my biggest title, the title that I wear the proudest, always
Mm.
is dad. That's the proudest title that I wear. That's the proudest accomplishment I feel that I have as a human, was to have these 3 children. So they always saw this loving, caring father, right, who was there for them, who hugged them. That has not changed. That hasn't changed at all. They do see this new sense of this dad that's, dude, he's doing it for himself, man.
Mm.
Before he was like this sailor on this ship, and yeah, if he had to fish, he fished, and if he had to mop, he mopped. But now he's like the captain of his own ship. That's like
Mm.
pretty cool. And in all of this, again, my reawakening, my awakening, my reinvention comes through psychedelics. What I talk about is psychedelics. There's mushrooms pretty much everywhere I go in one way or another, because it's become part of my world. And it's the sense of this mission of talking about the responsible use of it. But imagine when your teenage kids, when your teenage daughter, when your kids in their 20s are like, wait a minute, you're doing what? Hold on a second, Dad. Wait a minute. Let me get this correct. Like, you're going to start using psychedelics? Really? I don't understand. And wait, hold on a second. And you're going to start an apparel company for people to manifest that they're doing something cool? What the seriously? Have you thought this out? Have you? I'm just asking, right? And the oldest one, who's now 28, he's lived the world. You know what I mean? He's lived in New York. He's lived in Paris. To him, it was like, okay, dad's just evolving. To my middle son, who's in the army, to him, it's still, he doesn't jaywalk. You know what I mean? You know what I mean? To him, it's, I get it, dad. I see what you're doing. I'm not going to wear your apparel. I got to wear it. You know what I mean? But thank you, because I know you see me and you're trying to work in a way to help vets, or you're at least bringing awareness to the situation with veterans. So thank you for doing that. But my daughter was the biggest one that was hard to convince. The biggest one. You know what I mean? At 19, dad, what are you doing? Now she wears our beanies on campus. You know what I mean? And it's funny, Brad, because my first big journey with psilocybin, there was this sense of listening and hearing these messages of, you don't need your kids' approval. You don't. They might not walk by your side right now. They're always going to walk behind you. And eventually, they're going to come up and walk by your side when they see the change, when they see what you're doing, when they see what your mission is, when they see that this isn't something, let's go get high, let's go. No, there's something to this. That to them is this sense of this new dad, right? But I'm still dad. I'm still going to be, like you said, annoying, because I'm going to ask you, well, how much did you drink? Whatever dads do, right? We're always going to be that. Or because, but sometimes, and I catch myself sometimes when I'm with my dad, because my parents live in Miami. I live in Atlanta. So it's not very often I get to spend time with them. I try to go down as often as possible. It's not that far. But sometimes, like you said, you do catch yourself like, God, that really annoys me that he does that, but he's my dad. And I hope that I don't get that sense. How many more hugs do we have? We don't know. No. You know what I mean? I get that. I get that sense of sometimes dads are like, okay. But I'm not sure if you've seen this or not. There's sometimes these things. I once caught myself standing like in a certain way, right? And I'm like, whatever. And I'm like, why do I stand that way? And I look over and my dad was standing the same way. So sometimes enough, like he's so annoying when he stands like that. And there I am standing like that. So
it's funny. Like it's funny you say that, because I don't know what it is about the way I walk, but every fucking pair of shoes that I have, the sole of the shoe on the bottom right is always gone. For what it's like a steep angle. It's like it's gone at an angle. And of course, I look at my dad's shoes, same fucking thing, and I'm like, what the hell? What is it about the way we both walk, and what did I get from him that our shoes are all fucked up? Anyway,
love that story. That's a great story. And again, it's the adage that the apple doesn't fall far from the tree. You know what I mean? It's
No, I agree with you, and it's one of those things where I think as you age, you like embody and you reconcile and you accept and you almost and also like celebrate, right?
Yeah.
Because we are our parents' children, and those of us who have lucky to have like good homes and good parenting, and even through adversity and hardship and stuff like that. I'm curious. One more question before we move on.
Yeah.
Why was it so difficult for your daughter to accept it? Was she worried for your safety?
My safety, for the safety, for what happens if the cops stop you. You're going to get arrested. And if you get arrested, you're going to go to jail. And then what do I do with a dad in jail? You know what I mean? At the same time, it's sometimes like I tell her, look, I don't sell any product. I sell a lifestyle, right? And it's that lifestyle of responsibly and with intentions using psychedelics as life performance enhancers. That's what I do, right? And at the same time, guide people into how to create a safe and effective microdosing practice, because it's about education. Don't microdose because you heard, hey, Cesar Marin microdosed and he changed his life around, so it's got to help me. No, that's not what it's about. It's educate yourself. And if the apparel does that, through the apparel someone sees a shirt that says microdosing on it, and someone's, oh, you microdose? I've heard about that. I've read about that. So she gets that now. And you're right, that it's that sense of her. And look, I microdose, so of course there's psilocybin here. How else could I microdose? And there's times that she's come to the house and she's like, so what would happen if the cops knocked on the door? And I'm like, what? They're probably looking for something totally else besides a couple capsules of could be lines made. But again, it's her sense of what happens, Dad, if something happens.
Yeah, and I understand that. I think it's also like really funny, right? With like law enforcement did you ever see a group of people smoke a bunch of weed and then get violent? No, they're like too
No,
stoned to move
no,
and they want a pizza,
exactly,
right? And
exactly.
same thing with psychedelics and alcohol. Hey, you can drink as
Oh,
much as you
drink all you
want. Go be
want. Yeah,
violent.
yeah,
Go shoot people.
go crash
Uh,
into a tree, go do whatever, go
no
pick
problem,
fights.
right?
No,
Yeah.
that's all good.
No, no, no,
That's
that's
all
all
good.
good.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's talk about this particular moment.
Yeah,
You're 54.
yeah.
You got let go from CNN,
Uh-huh.
and I imagine you're questioning, who are you? What do you do? What now? I'm 54, and I'm sure there's like this existential crisis that kind of like bubbles up. But there's also this other aspect that, again, something you also mentioned in our previous call, and I love this idea because I frequently talk about this. Is I also grew up with very little,
Yeah,
and so did you.
yeah,
And the way you put it is, I grew up poor, but I worked so much, my relationships became poor. This is a really interesting idea
yeah.
because the similar saying that I have is that if you're an immigrant, the ethos is work hard, but if you're happy, you're not working hard enough, right?
Correct.
So tell me about what happened at 54. I also want to hear about this perspective of what does happiness and joy and quality of relationships mean?
I didn't grow up with much in the sense of my parents came here in the 70s. Where it was, I'm not going to say easier for immigrants, but it was a little bit more accepted, right? They could make
And
a
they came
life for
from
themselves. Colombia. They came from
Colombia.
Colombia. I was 4 years old, and my parents were very hard workers. You know what I mean? My
Mm,
dad worked hard. My mom came, she had some entrepreneurship to herself, and she created her small little business, and then that business grew and it continued to grow. So it was poor in the sense of there was always love, right? So it was just a sense of sometimes you see some people that have everything, right? That have it's
mhm,
just there's a difference between a want and a need, right? In my house, there was more needs than wants, even though there was wants. My mom had a business, and my mom being an only child, there was always something there. But you do get this sense of like, you need to work so hard that the relationship, which is the real wealth, the wealth is not the TVs you have. The wealth is not the cars you have. The wealth is not the house you have. The wealth is the relationship that you have with the people around you. That's wealth. That's true wealth. And sometimes we're in this grind at work that we don't even realize that maybe we're not paying attention to our kids. That maybe we need to slow down and pay attention to our partner or whatever they need. And that's where that dynamic was a bit shattered and broken in my earlier part of my life. And I was lucky enough. I got divorced about 5 years ago. I was lucky enough to find someone incredibly important in my life who's been rock solid, and she was part of this. And she's changed my way of thinking in a lot of things. And she's been instrumental in this new shape that I have. And it was that awakening which happened at the age of 54. And I was really lucky because the medicine knew when to come. And
mm,
I'm a big believer in that. I'm a big believer because it all happened very subsequent. The order of things happening were beautiful. It was divine universe intervening when it needed to without me having to suffer in the sense of my close relative of mine has an experience at Martha's Vineyards, 4th of July, 2022. They say, "Oh my God, I felt like a child. You don't understand. My kids who an hour before I wanted to kill them. Like I
mm,
realized how beautiful they were. My husband, I realized how lucky I am to have this person." And at that time, obviously, the cannabis use was to the point where it's like wasn't really doing much. You know what I mean? It wasn't like I was really getting high. So it was this sense of, like, wait a minute, maybe whoa, hold on a second. What is this new high? A couple weeks later, I'm on a bike ride here in Atlanta with a whole bunch of people. A friend of mine is riding next to me, and he's got a smile from ear to ear. And I'm like, dude, you okay? I just had some mushrooms, and I feel like a child, like I'm riding my bike for the first time. And I was like, what are you even talking about? What is this mushroom? And again, like I said, I'd never had a psychedelic experience, right? I was programmed. It's bad. It's horrible. That's for hippies. That's for stoners. That's for Grateful Dead. Whatever it is. No, you don't want to do that. You don't want to touch that
mm,
stuff. No way. No, people go crazy. And I asked my friend, I go, so do you know how I can get these mushrooms? And he looks at me and goes, these bikes don't pay for themselves. And I was like, wait a minute. So the mushrooms say, hey, you listen to this story.
mm,
Hey, listen to this other story. And by the way, that dude can get them for you. What are the odds? What are the chances? And it was right then when I have this awakening. This is back in November of 2022. And at that time, as I have this awakening and I start to microdose, part of the intentions, or not part, the intentions when I started my microdosing practice on November 7th, 2022, number one was stop the cannabis. Stop having the cannabis control. You control the cannabis. You control the cannabis. You can say, not today, not right now, maybe later. I don't know. I don't know what's going to happen. I'm not going to say I'm never going to smoke cannabis again. You know what I mean? It's never is a hard word. But right now, no. Right now, I'm okay. So the intentions were give yourself that consciousness to be able to do that. And number two, it was like, something's going to happen, man. I get the sense that I'm a number on a spreadsheet somewhere in some office in New York with a whole bunch of suits going, number 67, how much? How long has he been here? How much is he making? Slice that. So that's one. That's gone. And it was like, okay, wait, that's coming. What's going to happen? So the intentions were like, what's going to happen after CNN? I'm not going to be here for 10 years and they're going to roll me down the stairs. They thank you for your service, Cesar. You know what I mean? Something's got to happen. I got to do something for myself. There was this urgency of you got to do something. And that's when the whole vision of cultivating wisdom was born. And I start to manifest. And Rad, imagine this. I'm at CNN talking to people about psychedelics and about drugs and the fact that I'm microdosing right now. People are like, are you serious? You're sitting here telling us that yes, because you don't understand. This is really helping people. Like I stopped using cannabis. I was using cannabis 24/7 and I was able to be conscious enough to say, not right now. So this is really working. And it was funny because at that time, Sanjay Gupta had done a story. Johns Hopkins had just released a study. So it was like, there was some validation to it. And I was like, wait a minute. Yeah, this is what I'm doing. Fortunately, the medicine gave me this opportunity to say, hey, you know what, Cesar? We're going to close this 25-year chapter and we're going to open up this new one. So I was never in that desperation of what am I going to do next? And it could have happened. And Rad, if I think about it, and people ask me, Cesar, what would have been of your life if psychedelics wouldn't have come when they came? And I'm like, I honestly don't know. I fear to think what that could have looked like. I fear to think that person without a job, smoking cannabis 24/7, escaping, trying to see where he was. That's scary to think. And that would have been me. Who's hiring a 55-year-old producer? Nobody. No TV done. Nobody watches TV anymore. Nobody says, hey, let's sit down at 6 o'clock and watch Wolf Blitzer. Nobody does. It just doesn't happen. So I could have lived that. But I was incredibly lucky. The universe blessed me in a way and said, here, we're going to open your mind to these things that are being used. And it's just so everything happened at such a, my awakening happened, Rad, was right when Wonderland was happening in 2022. So imagine, I started Googling and stuff and I'm like, wait a minute, they're having like a Super Bowl of psychedelics. They're having this huge conference in Miami and it's all these beautiful people and it's all these wonderful stuff. And look at all these products and look at Rad and look at these person and I'm going to follow him. And I'm like, wait a minute, this isn't the psychedelics of the 60s. No, wait a minute. This is psychedelics of Johns Hopkins University. And this is psychedelics of NYU. And this is psychedelics of Emory University. Wait a minute. One of the biggest universities in Atlanta has a whole dedicated to psychedelics? Not one or two professors teaching psychedelic history? No, like a whole division. And I was like, okay, I'm in the right place. I was fortunate enough that I didn't have to suffer that. Now, again, that doesn't mean that I don't sometimes wake up going, what am I doing? Where's this going? Is this really going to happen? And then you see psychedelic companies, obviously people in biotech and stuff like that, which is a lot of money. And when you invest a lot of money, you roll big dice. And if you don't hit the right dice, you can go under. So it's all that stuff. But then I go, why can't my apparel be sold at Macy's? Doesn't say go do a line of blow. It's like much love and just it's microdosing and it's just psilocybin changed my life. So I was lucky, right? I really was to be able to have the universe put me in a place where right now I am where I am. Like all of us, I've learned from the past. I've learned from those suffering moments. I've learned from that sense of identity. But right now, it's my identity is me. And what I have is what I have. And what I have is what I need. And who I am is who I am.
There's a lot to respond to. But I think one thing that I've been thinking about a lot, because I've had a number of conversations actually with friends and people I just met around cannabis use. And I don't I don't put any substance on a pedestal,
Mm,
or any drug or any medicine on a pedestal. It's
yeah,
all about the relationship to the substance, right?
correct.
I enjoy a drink. I don't think alcohol is bad, but of course, a bad relationship to the alcohol could have really terrible, devastating outcomes, right?
Correct.
I think the same thing with cannabis. And I used to smoke a ton in university,
Hmm.
and it wasn't until like year 4 that I recognized that everything around me was crashing. Because you know what? When you're high on cannabis, you're just like okay, things going to shit.
Yeah,
You're
you
like,
don't care. Yeah, it's fine.
yeah, what,
It's
man,
whatever. There's a lot of
yeah.
escaping. There's a lot of
There's a
I'll
lot
do
of
that
escapism.
tomorrow, and it's
I don't we talk about it enough, right?
no, no.
And there's I think an overlap with psychedelics too, and of course it depends on what substance you're talking about. But this diffuse effect that it has, this sort of lifestyle addiction that you have with cannabis, could apply to mushrooms, could apply to microdosing.
Mm-hmm.
And that's, I think, it's really worth thinking about, especially
Definitely.
if you're talking about
Def-
responsible use, if you're talking about like education, educated use of these substances.
Yep.
And we should not take for granted that, the ability to have these substances, talk about them, is privileged still, because it is criminalized heavily in a lot of places, the US particularly. I think in Canada, it's weird. There's
There's
very few
places in
Canadians that I
Canada.
talk to that are like, I never ate mushrooms and walked in the forest. It's like every fucking Canadian.
Yeah, it's part of it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But tell me a little bit about the sort of what's been how do you, looking back, how do you process that? I know it's escapism, but there's something else, and I see it a lot in people. Now that cannabis use has been normalized, it's almost gone the
Mm,
other way. It's
mm.
crazy, like how, and it's very discreet. You'll have a little vape,
Yeah, that
smoke
was
here,
yeah,
smoke
yeah.
there. Yeah,
That's the other thing. Look, it's a different world, obviously, than when I grew up. Right? It's like we said, kids can kids before like my age. If you wanted to use cannabis, you in your house, you literally had to go in the bathroom, open the window, whatever.
yeah. Hole in the
Kids,
bottle, and then do
exactly,
compressions in the bathroom, that kind of shit.
exactly. Nowadays, kids take a gummy. They take a gummy in their living room and whatever. So it's a very nonchalant use of cannabis, and the fact that who would have ever thought if 10 years ago, Rad, someone had said, look, you're going to be able to drive up to a gas station in the United States, and the gas station is going to have more cannabis products than lottery tickets. More cannabis
Crazy.
products than lottery tickets. That's crazy. And it's not, it's literally cannabis. It's THC, and then they sell it as THCA, but it's still THC. Yes, it doesn't have Delta 9, although it has Delta 9 when it burns. So you're right. It's become very, and the problem when that happens is that when substances, whatever substances used, without intentions, that's when problems can arise. Awesome. You know what? You want to have a drink because what are your intentions? My intentions, I'm gonna have some friends over, and we're gonna have a wine or two, and we're gonna enjoy ourselves. No one ever. I'm sure at college, my intentions is to get shit faced. Good luck with that. I hope you make it back okay. Hope you don't
Yeah.
fall. I hope you don't break something. I hope you're gonna fight. The possibilities of what could happen are just.
Mm.
I'm not sure if those should be your intentions. But when used with intention, and that's the problem when I can go in a gas station, pick up a vape, get in my car, smoke my vape. What's the intention? What are you using it for? Now, for me, the relationship I have with cannabis, the respect I have for it, is more a sense of, you know what are the intentions? You know what, I got a couple friends over, we're hanging out, we just had a good festival, we're chilling. My intentions are to have a good time with my friends, right? But before, there was no intentions. It was just the cannabis saying, get high, get high. Or for what? No, just don't worry, get high. We'll figure that out tomorrow. And it's funny because I tell people, even in those like really good highs, right, where you're like, you have these ideas and you have whatever. The next morning, or either you totally forgot what the hell they were,
Yes,
or they're not
man.
good ideas. You're like, that was
They're
stupid
rarely good
shit."
ideas.
That was what was I thinking? What was I high?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's. I hope we have more education, especially with psychedelics, because again, they're two different things, and that's why it's. I'm not a big fan of comparing. Hey, you know what? The cannabis industry did it this way, so let's make sure the psychedelic does it also. And when you go around and packaging for psilocybin that looks like Starburst or looks like kids' candies, you know what? I'm not sure how responsible that is. You know what I mean? And it was funny. Look, the other day, a woman sent me a message, and she said her and her husband went to a vape shop, picked up some Scooby-Doo looking Amanita mushroom packaging thing. And she literally asked me, are these okay for microdosing? And I was like, Let me think for a second. No, no. So
Yeah.
it's important. That educational part is really important. You said it, Brad. This isn't, psychedelics are for everybody. Psychedelics are going to change the world. Psychedelics are going to save the world. Psychedelics, no, there's a lot of things. And as we open up this Pandora's box and it opens up even more, there's a whole bunch of other things we're going to have to deal with. We're going to have to deal with when more people in lower marginalized or lower served communities will either want to find some healing, some awakening, or try to, because I'm sure there's a difference between if someone of color gets caught with a pound of mushrooms than
Right.
if someone who's white gets caught with 8 pounds of mushrooms.
I
So
think
it's
really.
those
No, go on. Finish.
no, so those educational components, especially for Latinos, the African American community, that community that's so underserved that they feel underrepresented always. This is a space where they really feel underrepresented. So if they do it wrong, I don't want to even think about that.
I think this is a very critical point, and I'm really glad you brought it up because if you think about, I'm in tech. I spent a lot of time in tech, and everybody talks about how Steve Jobs created Apple after doing LSD. But here's Steve Jobs, white looking, can talk openly about doing acid and then building a $1 trillion company, right? If you're from the margins, low income neighborhoods, if you're a person of color, you talk about smoking a joint, guess what? You got 10 cops jumping over
Yep.
you,
Yep.
stomping you to
Yeah.
death, probably.
Yeah.
So I think the politics of consciousness is really interesting, right? Who is
Mm.
allowed to alter their consciousness?
Mm.
Who has access to what forms of consciousness altering substances? I think this one's really important. I'm going to ask you, given where you are now, and you talk a lot about education, I think to me, cultivating wisdom is essentially about education. It's
Definitely.
about
Yeah.
talking about the responsible use of psychedelics and so on. How would you address, this question of responsible use to say someone like your parents, your Colombian parents who've been in the U.S. for a while, versus the Latino community, versus the psychedelic community, who I think is very open. But this is not, I don't think the psychedelic community is indicative of the challenge we have ahead of us,
Correct.
because we're talking about people who it's not that they don't want to, but the fear is really
fear.
real, and
The fear is real.
it's understandable again.
Yeah.
So how would you tell me a little bit about your approach would be to, again, talking to someone like your parents versus your Latino community, Colombian community, and so on?
I think the first thing that needs to be talked about is transformation, and people see the transformation. My parents are like, you talk different, like you act different in a better way, like in a total better way. So that's the first part. The first part,
What's the difference? What do you mean? I think this is really important.
difference in
What did they sense? What did they sense?
So difference in one, my confidence in myself, and not cocky confidence. No, that's not arrogance confidence, but the sense of you can do it. Like you can do this. Like you can do this. And it was especially my mother who, like I said, came to this country with one hand in the front, one hand in the back, and made it for herself. But because she was an entrepreneur, she wasn't anybody's employee. She was the boss. She was the boss, right? And a good boss, a good leader with heart who opened up to people who said, you don't have how to pay me today? Don't worry. We'll figure that out later. So for her, that sense of, dude, start your own business. Oh, no, I'm fine. Dude, you're never going to work as hard for something until it's yours. I'm fine, Mom. Just leave. I work at CNN. Mom, I work at CNN. What do you want from me? Oh, I want you to be your own boss. I want you to control what you're doing. I don't want you to have to worry if you're going to get laid off or not. Now she sees it. Now she's, wait a minute. And it's funny because, look, this is a great story, and I'm not sure if I shared this. When I tell my parents, when I tell my mom, that cannabis dependency I deal with, she looked at me, she said, I'm your fucking mother. Of course I do. I said, okay, let's start there. I said, Mom, I'm going to start using psychedelics, curb my cannabis addiction. And she was like, you crazy? Are you serious? What the fuck, Cesar? What's wrong with, have you smoked that much weed that you think that's the solution? Have you seen how old you are? Have you seen that you have 3 kids? She was literally like, what have I done? What, she was upset at me. She was upset at herself. She was just like, psychedelics, really? That's what you're doing? And it was crazy. She called Isabel and she asked her, and Isabel said, I'm going to be honest with you. Before he was escaping, he was just in escape mode. Now he's like present. Now he's, okay, wait a minute. Hold on a second. I got to do something. Let's do something. And it's crazy because a month after that conversation with my mom, I started my business, have an LLC, have a vision, I have something. And we've now had more conversations. She's in Colombia, and she sees this pen. She buys it for me, and she brings it back, and she hands it to me, and she says, "I'm so proud of what you're doing." Oh, it's like, wait a minute. My parents are proud of the fact that you use psychedelics. Like, what a turnaround. The change is what the turnaround comes. And then there's other little tools, right? I sat my parents down and said, let's watch Fantastic Fungi. Just so you get a sense of what I'm talking. And it was funny because when we turned the tea off, Mom goes, I thought they were the enemies. Like, the mushrooms are the heroes. Like, the mushrooms could like potentially save the world with oil spills and, recycling and a whole bunch of other stuff, and cure people and make people awaken. So it's that. And the other thing is, and this is important for all of us in this minority, whatever minority we are, that if this is what we're doing, that we become that face for that minority. Why are a lot of Latinos scared? Because they don't see any other Latinos talking about psychedelics.
Absolutely.
Why are African Americans scared? Because there's 2 guys, maybe 3 guys, maybe talking about this. So I don't know. It's a bunch of white people. It's a bunch of privileged people. It's a bunch of people who have $24,000 to go get a psilocybin treatment in Oregon. So where do we fit in? Where does the lower underserved communities fit in? Are they not going to be healed? Are they not going to have? They'll have the access to the medicine, of course, because you can grow mushrooms anywhere. But will they understand how to use them? Will they hear someone in their language, in their voice, in their tone, in their look? I speak to people who look like me. I speak to people who have lost their job. I speak to people who have been divorced. I speak to people whose kids are older. I speak to people who have gotten to 50 and gone, there's 50 that way. I don't know how many's left this way. I speak to those people. So speak to your people. Speak to your people and show them the change. Because here's the other thing, Rad, and I tell people, I worked in mass media long enough to know that they're just waiting for one headline. You're just waiting for pilot takes shroom, tries to down plane. They love that shit. So let's bombard them with positive stories. Entrepreneurs start a healing space to help underprivileged people. You know what I mean? Thought leader has African American takes acid and starts a brand new company, right? Whatever that story is, that's how we get to these communities, by showing us. They're not gonna trust people that don't look like them. That's just the way it is. Because we don't know if you're programming us, if you're trying to steal from us, if you're trying to hoodwink us, if you're trying to program us. But if they see people like I can relate to, okay, wait a minute, then. And that's why, again, for me, this first year was like, okay, let's do something. Let's have a platform. Let's create this apparel store. Let's launch something so we can teach people through the ebook. Let's do some stuff. But I know, Brad, that I have a responsibility to the Latin American community. I know I do. To somehow share this message with them also, to show them that, hey, you know what? Use responsibly. Use with intentions. These substances could help you. So it's important. And that's how we reach we reach those communities by talking to them in their language and showing them people that look like them. Because you've been to conferences, brother.
Oh, yeah.
And there's, and look, I don't particularly look Latino. Like, I could pass off for anywhere else, but the people that stood out for being different were really small. And hopefully that'll change. Hopefully, little by little, that'll change. But a lot of things, we need that education, and that's why that education is so.
I love everything you've said, and I think I couldn't agree with you more. I think there's a lot of ways you can fix structural systemic issues, but the first one starts with inspiration, right?
Yeah.
Trying to inspire and reach our own communities, that's where it starts, right? And I try to do that
Let me
for my own community. Yeah, all good, man.
You want me to end? So why don't you just come back?
No, it's all good.
All right,
I'll just
okay,
I'll just say.
Yeah. All right.
No, I was saying that I love what you said. I think I couldn't agree with you more. There's a lot of ways to fix structural and systemic problems, but the first way could be just trying to inspire others to open their minds, and it starts with ourselves, right?
Yes.
There's nobody else out to help us in our communities, and if we believe in something enough, we have to talk about it. We have to be the ones that leads the way, because I think for minorities and underrepresented communities, you have not only the current issues, which is stigma, criminalization, access, but also historical issues or ancestral sort of stacked like ancestral problems that have like epigenetically passed through
Correct.
generations and stuff, right? So it's really important to first start with talking about what is done for you. And I couldn't agree with you more again. When I think about me as an immigrant, as somebody who's from Bangladesh, I try to do this for my own community, right? There's hardly anybody that I know of, at least, from Bangladesh talking about this stuff.
No.
I don't take particular pride in that and says like, oh, I'm the only one. I
Yeah.
wish there were more, but I am the only one. And so I got to take that responsibility.
Yeah.
And I also love talking about it because I think our people carry so much trauma with us. Like I said, not just because of the present moment, but because of, again, generations and generations
Generations.
of stuff that's happened before. And part of the challenge I also think is when you talk about psychedelics, you're talking about actually well-being. You're talking about wellness. You're talking about health. You talk about spirituality. Part of the issue is that because of how consumer wellness works, how consumer well-being works, right?
Yeah.
It's all productized. There's a particular vision you get or an idea you get when you talk about wellness, right? And it's usually fucking glitter fairies and Burning Man
Yeah.
or ultra luxe, like athletic leisure wearing people
Mm-hmm.
drinking like $25 smoothies. It's not relatable. It's
No.
not fucking relatable. And I think part of what you said is really, I think, impactful because none of that shit matters. It's the stories that matter. It's the stories of transformation that matters the most. It's also good to segue to the last part of the conversation, which I'm really curious. Like, you spent 25 years at CNN. You saw how mass media has played out. You're also probably paying attention to how mass media is actually mutating as we speak, right? Everybody's a mini propagandist in a way because of you have a supercomputer in your hand and you got Instagram and all this stuff. I think responsible use of storytelling and media goes hand in hand with responsible use of substances.
Definitely.
How do you, as somebody who is very prominent and outspoken, both in your cohort, in your age cohort, but also generally in the community, how do you think about that responsibility?
You know what? It's really important, and you make a great point. And it's just when you held your phone, something was really enlightening, and you talked about how anyone can be a propagandist right now. Anyone. And when I first started to work at CNN, you literally needed a studio, you needed a camera, you needed a control room, you needed a director, you needed that to be punched up to a satellite, that then had to come down from the satellite, and you had to have a receiver, and you received it. That's the only way you can get your voice out. And you needed to pay money for that airtime. Now everybody's got airtime. Everyone does. Every single person has access to airtime and to this global audience, right? So you're right. It is our responsibility to do this correctly. It is our responsibility to share our stories. And now we have that option. It's not like before, it's like, oh, if I'm not on a stage. No, if you have a story, tell your story. Use your mass media to tell this story, to tell it the right way. Because there is too many, hey, get rich quick, or hey, have some microdosing. Hey, take some acid. Hey, come to our retreat center. Hey, whatever it is, it's too easy. So there's a lot of, I have this adage that there's two types of people in the psychedelic world, right? There's those who are manifesting love you wealth and those who are manifesting fuck you wealth, right? That love you wealth, I know that there's a lot more of us than them. And those who are creating that love you wealth, it's up to us to use our mass media platforms, whether it's me on simply cultivating wisdom, sharing my stories, and look, trepidations that people over 50 have, and this is how psychedelics and microdosing helped me. Or, hey, you know what? Look, I partnered up with this company so you can grow your own mushrooms at home. Whatever it is, it's up to us. It's really up to us. We can't rely on mass media anymore to tell us what is the truth, right? What is the truth at the end of the day, right? We all create our own truth, but we really can't trust mass media to give us an objective scene. And look, and not that CNN was not objective. I worked there long enough to know that a script of mine, which was a sports script, okay, had to go through 2 copy editors, right, before it made air. And this was just 5-beat 4. So I know that stuff is vetted, but that doesn't mean that things have to be one-sided. Right? It can't be Trump took a shit, breaking news. Trump walked off an airplane with a piece of toilet paper on his foot, breaking news. Trump called somebody silly, breaking news. Because we become, and look, and I was in that world, Brad. I was in that. What's next? What happened? What's going on? Breaking news. What did he do now? What are they doing now? What's Biden do? You go crazy. They literally program us to go crazy, and they feed us that pilot takes shrooms, tries to downplane, in 20 minutes. Oh shit, I can't go anywhere because I got to hear the story because they're programming us to want to hear their narrative. So it's up to us now. It's up to us. It's like the old, remember, and this might be, I might be 10, 15 years older than you are, but I don't know if you remember the movie Broadcast News. I'm as mad
I
as
don't think I watched
hell.
it.
I'm as mad as hell, and I'm not going to take it anymore. That's what we have to do, but it has to be with love. Like, I'm mad as hell, and I'm not going to take it anymore, but I'm going to lead with love. If we do that, there's hope, because let's be honest, we're like right now in a time in humanity where we're like teetering on what can go happen.
Yeah.
What can happen? And here's Caesar. Today's the best day of my life.
I
Where
think
do
you're
I want to
speaking
live?
to. I think you're speaking to a very. It's all of the above,
Yeah.
and I think the point of what I think you and I are talking about is not joy and happiness, ignoring everything else. It's joy and happiness despite everything
Despite
else.
everything else. Correct.
Because
Correct.
the world's all perhaps maybe always been crazy and mad and chaotic and violent and
Yeah.
fucked up.
Yeah.
But
People have been mean. People have been mean all
yeah,
since the start of humanity. Didn't Cain kill Abel, according to the stories? Right? So it's like, yeah, we've been
yeah,
horrible. We have the potential.
we have, and I think where psychedelics is really they're really powerful as medicines is, and it's not just psychedelics, of course, like meditation, like community, friendships,
Friendship,
love.
love.
They're powerful because they take you out of your spell. They break the spell and go, yeah, maybe I shouldn't take myself that seriously because at the end of the day, I'm dead like anybody else.
Yeah.
So why take it so seriously, right? Because it's this illusion of control. Actually, it's funny, right? With control, you're fucked if you don't have it. You're fucked if you have too much of it.
Too much of it. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's like, what is the right level of like flow between control, chaos,
And then
and then letting go?
yeah, and then maybe that's what it said. It's flow. It's not control. It's
Mhm.
that you can have inventory and know where things are through your flow without it being controlling. Because you're right. If you have too little of the control, it's bad, and if you have too much of it, it's also bad. So just you made a good point. It's that flow. It's that flow state. Yeah.
Last question to you. Okay. So I imagine 50 or 54 was a milestone for you. What age would you consider to be the next milestone? I have a particular reason I'm asking.
Wow, that's
Do you imagine pausing at 80? Do you imagine pausing at 100?
pausing in what sense? Pausing and stopping working, pausing and stopping living, pausing in
The reason I'm asking,
sort of.
whatever that next age is, what would you want the current Caesar to know if you're looking back?
In other words, if it's me in my 80s, I'd
Mm.
like to tell Caesar, always keep going, never give up. You could be bent, but you can't be broken. Right? That's the idea that I really didn't realize that before. Before I was like, whatever. I wasn't even bending myself. I wasn't even bending. I wasn't taking myself to the bending point. And now to keep to that bending point. And it's, look, my mom's 80, right? And my mom is still thriving. And she actually, after she bought this necklace, she makes these. She makes it. So she's 80 and she's thriving. Is she still working? No. You know what I mean? That she's got a good life? Yes. That and it's funny, Rad, because after the CNN thing, where it was like, there was moments of, okay, like, what's going to happen? And there's moments still now where it's like, this is a business that's starting. This isn't CNN money. It's where we're starting. And hopefully, since it's love you wealth, that wealth will, as we give, it continues to come back. And with compound interest, that's what we're manifesting. But I'm at the stage in my life, maybe if I was still at CNN in that doldrum world, I could be like, you know what, it's 60, good, I'm done, whatever. But it's like right now, this moment is so good right now that I can't even think like a week from now. I want to enjoy this one. I want to enjoy this moment. And there's still so much to do. I'm just starting. This apparel company is just starting my teaching or my coaching for people over 50 to be able to start safe and effective microdosing practices. It's just starting. The idea of me being part of or helping create a space for veterans when they take that uniform off to come in and say, hey, you know what? Let us help you. Let us give you a hug and let us teach you how to do some somatic healing through breath work and yoga because you really need it. I have a kid who's in the Army, Brad, I know when he gets out and when he has that uniform, he's going to be surrounded by love because he's got incredibly wonderful people around him between his siblings and his mother and his friends and his fraternity brothers. But there's a lot of those dudes that come out nothing. So if I can create a space where they can come and then maybe, you know what, hey, instead of going through a whole bunch of SSRIs and a whole bunch of medication, I'm going to try a microdosing protocol and see how that works. And then maybe, you know what, let's bring in a couple of guys who have thought like you and have been in the trenches with you and think like you guys do, because I'll be honest with you, I've seen my kid and I can nurture him and I know I brought him to the world, but I have no clue how he thinks. He's been through stuff that I have no idea. We can create a healing center like that. And then I'm not even started yet, because I'd love to create some type of center to help underserviced, lower income, and marginalized communities, for people who have gotten that calling to heal, where they can go somewhere and say, hey, we're going to teach you how to use this medicine. And it's not going to cost you $14,000 to get a certificate.
Right.
We're going to find ways so that you can take this healing back to your community, because your ancestors used these medicines and they were taken away from you. So come, let us teach you how to use them responsibly, respectfully, and see if you can take them back. So I'm just starting, right? There's so many other things that I have the manifestation of these dreams that I want to create, that it's like, I can't think about stopping right now. I can't think about where it's like, I'm going to be okay. And look, hopefully if the idea is that to create wealth, to have more time with my family, with my kids, with myself, with enjoying life itself, then yeah, but not until we get all these other things in place that are needed. Not until we try to help veterans as much as we can. Not until we hopefully have some type of system so that our communities can also have access to using these medicines correctly. Then when that's done, then okay, you know what? We served our mission. We accomplished, and we'll go from there. But until then, it's day one, baby. Day one.
Hell yeah, Cesar. Very well said. And I am with you on this mission, and I wish you all the best. I really appreciate you spending the time with us. I think your energy is infectious, and may you live long and prosper, and also help everybody else prosper. Thanks so much for being here, Cesar.
Thank you. I appreciate you. I appreciate everything you're doing. Continue to do what you're doing, man. We're strong when we're together, even if we're minorities.
I appreciate you, man. Thank you so much.
Awesome.
This podcast was brought to life with the help of Carolyn Tripp on art and design. Thanks so much for listening to Minority Trip Report. If you're learning from or enjoying the podcast, please subscribe to MTR on YouTube at Minority Trip Report and follow us on Instagram at Minority Trip. It's a zero-cost way to support us and help us spread the word. Please also sign up with your email for new episode announcements, events, as well as our forthcoming newsletter. I'm your host, Rod Suraj. See you next time.